Hi everyone, I'm Miki. I work for Microsoft in the Cloud and AI division, and I heard about this initiative from Julius, it's here, and I think it's extremely interesting to us in terms of being able to understand and participate in what communities do around the US that are not the metropolitan communities, not the big ones that we all know and understand and make a lot of investment in. So to that end, I wanted to come down and kind of talk to you a little bit about what, how do I move this forward? There we go. I wanted to talk about what's the relationship between the kind of technology that we're working on in education, and I have Tisha here, my colleague, which will also come later and explain a little bit more about Microsoft in education. But first I wanted to start by talking about what those technologies are, where they go today, and this is not going to be a very technical deep dive. This is just going to be kind of a level set of a background of where we are and how we think, so that we can have a conversation from a place of we all understand what these things are doing. And the three I want to talk about specifically are cloud, AI, and Internet of Things. So let's start with cloud. What is cloud? Cloud is basically take a bunch of computers, put them together, put some software on them that provide services, add a network connection, and there you go, you have a cloud. But these clouds that we're talking about here are huge, right? They're very big. They're the most efficient way to manage compute power and storage. And they provide services for basically everything under the sun today. We don't even think about it, but everything we interact with in the digital world is a cloud. Netflix is a cloud. Skype is a cloud, Facebook's a cloud, Instagram, all of these things, they're all clouds. And you can, once you understand that this is where everything is going, you realize that all of our technology is going to have a back end that's essentially a cloud somewhere in the future. The startups that are here, I'm assuming they're all already on Azure, but if you're not, URL's right there. You need to sign up. It's free to start. Later on you'll pay, but for initially you get to start and play for free. Again, as Tisha is going to tell you later, we have a cloud in Microsoft for educators where they can come in and collaborate and... Did I do that?
That's our other speaker coming in.
Ah, no worries.
Well, it isn't. It's me looking for other speakers.
But we have even within Microsoft, we don't have one cloud, we have many. Office is a cloud and Skype's a cloud, and all of those are clouds. But the most important thing that I want you to take out of what the cloud means, and essentially the reason I'm here, is that cloud is democratizing our access to digital innovation. It means that whether you're in Burlington or in New York City, it makes no difference. You can create the next great startup right here. And that's because, and thanks to the cloud and to the network, obviously. I'll talk about the network in a little bit some more, but that's also very important. So we talked about cloud. Let's talk about IoT for a second. And I apologize, I know we're under a pretty quick clip, so we have some videos to show. So we kind of go through it. So what's IoT? What's Internet of Things? Essentially, every device that you have that has connectivity to a cloud is an Internet of Things device. So your phone is an Internet of Things device, your computer is, if you have a Nest Cam, it is an Internet of Things. If you have a Wi-Fi printer at home, it's an Internet of Things device. There are tons and tons of those devices today in many, many fields, as we all know, and the number of those devices is just growing exponentially. By 2020, as you can see from the numbers, the bottom line of this is essentially, on average, each one of us is going to have 6 Internet of Things devices that operate on our behalf, doing stuff to us, with us, for us. In education, the Internet of Things is getting adopted at a fairly reasonable pace. I'm going to show you a video in a minute talking about one school that capitalized on that kind of adoption and used it to create efficiencies. But there's lots of things that you can do that it allows you. Things like allowing children to move directly from rote learning of something to experimentation, creation, playing with it. being able to connect teachers and parents and students better. All of these things are part of why the Internet of Things is so important. And again, one of the most important things about the Internet of Things in general is the fact that as long as you have network connectivity, you're able to connect to a cloud that does all the thinking for you. And again, this is why it's so important to have initiatives like Ignite, that all they do is that they give you that connection, that pipe, that allows you to take a device and connect it to a cloud. So let's have a look at this video, if I can figure out how to play it. There we go.
We had a budget of 6.6 million, and 4 years later we have a budget of 3.3 million now. I'm Yarkoni. I'm the IT manager here of the community college, and we're about 10,000 students and about 1,000 employees.
One of the business problems schools have, they've got a lot of square meters here in the Netherlands. With IoT, you can create new business models in schools, making rooms smarter, making students smarter, especially with the Microsoft Azure IoT services.
Technology is everywhere. I think the app is very useful. You can find easily a room where you can talk with a student.
When I want to reschedule a lesson, I can do it myself.
We can have insights into the rooms, so we see how the occupation is at the school. And sometimes the school decides on this data that they need to expand or shrink the school.
We don't need any hardware anymore to invest. It's all in Azure platform. So I don't have to change my main data center because it's in the cloud. And our staff is, of course, less than it was. Our staff was about 23, and it's now about 10 people also.
Yeah, I kind of killed it in the middle because time. Okay, so we talked about IoT, we talked about cloud. So we have those big clouds that do tons of computation, store tons of data. We have those devices that emit information, receive information back, do stuff. But somebody has to make sense of all that tons of information. And this is where AI comes in, because people can do some of it, but not all of it by themselves. I think everybody's heard about artificial intelligence in some way, some form. What I want to do right now is kind of give you a flavor of where we are in terms of AI and where it's going, just as a general idea. So at the top right corner, you see Lee Sedol, the guy who was the reigning Go champion until 2016, where he lost to a machine. AlphaGo from Google basically beat him 4 out of 5 times. And to appreciate what this means, I want you to realize that in chess, you have 10 to the power of 120 options of how to move on the board. In Go, you have 10 to the power of 174. And that means 54 more zeros. That's a trillion more complicated. And AI today has the computational power, the sophistication, the neural networks, the machine learning to actually be able to beat people in that game. When you look at, there's Sir David Attenborough sitting in a Microsoft lab. He's getting filmed for an initiative with the British Museum where they have a lot of specimens that students can't touch because they're too rare. So what they're doing is they're creating virtual images of those specimens, and they allow students to experiment with them, play with them, look at them, move them in virtual space so that they can get the impression of exactly what they do. A few weeks ago in China, a guy was trying to run from the authorities. He went into a stadium of 60,000 people. And the facial recognition software caught him. They just got his face out of the crowd. And this is, Minority Report stuff, right? But it's real. It's happening right now. Google Home, Alexa, all those things, right? We see how, do you notice how we start talking to them? They're not very conversational yet, but they're starting to pick it up. Personally, I still use it just to make a grocery list, but you can tell that in a few years you'll be able to actually have a conversation with those things. They'll ask you clarifying questions still. There's going to be a back and forth. And all that indicates a lot of smart, a lot of compute power, but again, how intelligent it is. So let's look at human parity, right? So when you compare machines to what humans can do, in terms of object recognition, speech recognition, machine reading, all that stuff, we already reached human parity. Machines can do it better, to put it simply. There was an experiment recently they took like 50 lawyers and they put them against the machine in editing NDAs, non-disclosure agreements. The machines got a 94% accuracy rate. The lawyers got 85% accuracy rate. But that's not the important part. The important part is the machines did it in 30 seconds. The lawyer took an hour. So it's clearly moving very much into a direction that allows us to treat those machines as basically intelligent. This next video I want to show, and the last one, is about how AI and cloud and all those things and virtual reality are working for, medical education.
We've been teaching human anatomy the same way for 100 years. Students get a cadaver, then they look at medical illustrations, and it's completely two-dimensional, and the human body isn't.
Microsoft HoloLens is a holographic computer that you wear. It enables you to bring your digital world into your real world.
At Case Western Reserve University, we are focused on solving problems and creating new knowledge.
My job is to teach, and I really think this could impact almost everything that we teach people. With HoloLens, you can see the muscles on top of the skeleton all at the same time. You can bring them in and out and exactly understand where things sit.
You can take any anatomical part and show any of it. You can move it around, you can make it kind of translucent so you can see through the outside, and that really helped me understand how cardiac anatomy worked. I actually had a moment where I found the aortic valve, and it was the first time that I'd actually seen the aortic valve in relation to all the other anatomical structures. It was a way of seeing it that you couldn't do with an actual heart.
I think this will improve students' confidence in learning anatomy dramatically.
By creating simulations with the HoloLens that lets them have an experience where they can fail, that would be the best way to learn, because we don't allow people to fail too much in real-life medicine.
With HoloLens, you could imagine having a class standing around a model, almost like a tour group in a museum, where they're all interacting completely naturally. I spend a huge amount of time to make sure they become the best professionals, because it's all of our jobs to make the world a better place.
Okay. So, why are we not moving? So what happens next? This is the big question, right? What happens when all of those technologies, those clouds, those IoT devices, those HoloLens things, that AI, when they become better, which they will, and it'll happen soon. Are you going to have, in every class, every kid is going to wear a device that lets you know when they don't understand what they're talking about, that lets you know when they're anxious and they need help, so that you don't have to just look at faces and not know? Is our self-driving cars going to change completely the way we live? Because we won't be needing to congregate so much anymore. You'll just get into a pod and drive around whenever you need to. The true answer is we have no idea. Nobody knows. Anybody who tells you they know, they're lying. We're going to find out soon, but we know at this point we can't predict it. But the one important thing, final thought I want to leave you with is, I hear a lot of people feeling a little anxious about what's going to happen next. Are machines going to take over? Are they going to rule over the humans? And I think we need to look at it a little differently. Think about it this way: the AI, all those technologies, they're designed to make us superhuman. They're designed to give us the ability to extend our reach and to do more things. And when it comes to education, the hard question becomes, what do you teach kids? Because if there's an AI and there's all those technologies that are there to do the things that we normally as people do, If you don't need to edit documents as a lawyer, what do you need to do as a lawyer, right? And when we think about that, and as you think about through today, what I encourage you to remember is that there are things that machines won't do, not in the foreseeable future. Things like physicality, enjoying touch, right? Things like empathy, like curiosity, like judgment. Those are things that are inherently not somewhere where we can see machines do very soon, so we're pretty safe there. So when you think about education for the future, the question becomes, how do we teach kids to take those traits that are always going to be human and use them to extend what they can do and to create better for other humans? And with that, I want to have my colleague Tisha come up and talk a little bit about what Microsoft is doing for education. And that's it. Thank you.